There is no doubt, as has been said, that if there is one pressing matter before this 10th Senate, if there is one pressing matter before this 10th Senate, it is the issue of how we sustain and deepen and ring-fence the electoral system. Because if that fails, then we will only be a democracy in name. Will only be a democracy in name. And it's a great shame, it's a shame, that election period after election period, we seem to be regressing. I know that in this country, in 2007, President Yar'Adua, right there on the inaugural podium, restated his determination to review the electoral system that brought him into office. After Yar'Adua, 2015, a sitting president who appeared to be losing without even waiting for the final tally to be called, President Jonathan, made that historic call. And I was there in the room with him. The effort was to deepen and elevate Nigeria's democracy. And thereafter, 2019, we didn't see how that improved our system. So in some way, without casting blame or pointing fingers, we appear not to have built on the momentum that has been established. So, Mr. President, if there is one major achievement we must make in this 10th Senate under your leadership, we plead that it should be this issue of electoral reform. In India, where you have over 1 billion people voting, diverse nation, which is a continent of its own, they spend 2-3 weeks doing elections because of the size. But you hardly hear people go to court, challenging or killing themselves and so on. And they all have the differences too. Ethnic, tribe, religion, and all of that. So, Mr. President, we have an opportunity. The burden of proof in electoral matters, Mr. President, must shift to INEC. That is where it rightly and properly belongs. We should not subject it to the normal evidential rule that says he who alleges must prove. How can you prove something you don't even know? INEC is an electoral body conducting elections. INEC appoints people, a candidate and party has no control over them. INEC does whatever they do, juggle figures and announce. Do cancellations, they explain to no candidate, they explain to no party. And yet the law says, if you challenge it, he who alleges must prove. No. In every other matter, that may very well be the case. That's the common law. But we must make a change in our reviews in the Electoral Act now, requiring that for electoral matters, which are, as we lawyers say, sui generis, they're a particular class of their own, we must shift that burden. The burden of proving that the elections have been conducted peacefully and in accordance with law must shift to INEC. I want us to look at this carefully, and then when we do the clause by clause and at the committee considerations, we can look at it.
It's a very pathetic and painful situation. The kind of thing that makes you wonder if we're truly running a democracy or just pretending to. Imagine a country where the electoral body, the same INEC that is supposed to protect our votes, can just wake up in the middle of the night and announce whatever it likes as presidential election results. No explanation, no transparency, no breakdown of how they arrived at the figures they pushed out to Nigerians. Millions of Nigerians watching in disbelief when results started appearing out of nowhere. States where people clearly voted one way were suddenly showing different outcomes. And when you ask for the evidence, INEC gives you nothing. Then when you go to court, hoping that justice will prevail, the same court tells you that the evidence you brought is invalid unless it comes from INEC. Tell me, how does that make sense? I take someone to court because I believe they did something wrong, and the same person I'm accusing is the one expected to bring the document that will prove my case. How can that ever work? How can we build a fair system like that? Up till today, INEC has not provided any convincing explanation about how Bola Ahmed Tinubu was declared the winner of that presidential election. They just wrote figures and read them out. No transparency, no accountability, nothing. You even heard it from a senator himself that INEC could not, up till this very moment, provide the Labour Party with the Form EC8 for Lagos State. That form is not just a piece of paper. It's the foundation of the result, the real proof that shows what happened at the polling unit. If INEC cannot produce that, then what exactly are they protecting? What are they hiding? How can you say someone won an election when you cannot even show how the votes were counted, how they were transmitted, or how they were collated? We're not talking about emotions here, we're talking about facts. Every result must have a trace from the polling unit to the ward, to the local government, to the state, and finally to the National Collation Center. That is what builds trust in democracy. But instead, INEC has made Nigerians lose confidence in the process. Many young people who voted for the first time are now asking themselves if voting even matters. They saw how their effort, their hope, and their faith in the system were simply brushed aside. This is why I fully support the idea that INEC must be compelled by law to show how every candidate wins and not just announce numbers. They must publish the complete breakdown of votes from every polling unit, display the forms publicly, and make them available to all parties involved. That is the only way Nigerians can begin to trust the process again. And if truly the government wants to prove it has nothing to hide, then Tinubu himself should support this kind of reform. Let him sign it into law. Let there be full transparency in our elections. Because if your victory is genuine, you should have nothing to fear from the truth. We cannot keep living in a country where elections are treated like secrets. The people deserve to see how their votes are counted. Democracy dies when transparency disappears. INEC owes Nigerians an explanation, and not just words, but hard evidence. Until that happens, many will continue to believe that the will of the people was stolen in broad daylight.